So today I am going to teach a little bit about autism spectrum disorder, which is one of the 13 categories of disability that is covered under IDEA and that schools are required to provide accommodations for. So I wanted to start off by asking you, my student, what you know about autism, what you've heard and experienced.
It means their brain works differently.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. What have you seen? Like, how does it affect people who have it?
Well, they often have a hard time with social cues, but it's common that they might be very good at some particular subject, maybe math or I don't know.
Yeah, that is totally correct. Autism has a super wide range of possible symptoms and characteristics that you'll see, but those are two of the common ones, that they have a special interest and also that they have some social difficulties. We'll go into that more in depth a little bit later, but I wanted to start off by just going over some statistics. So in the United States, 1 in 54 children have autism spectrum disorder, which is just under 2%. So obviously that is a pretty high number. So as teachers, it is certain that we will encounter lots and lots of students with autism in our classes. So it's something that we should be prepared to address and help them with. Because, if you have 200 students as a secondary teacher, that's 4 each year. So something that is not uncommon, and we shouldn't see it as a bad thing or kind of treat them as less. We should definitely make all the students feel welcome and know that it can be a strength to them. So here are a few of the common characteristics for those with autism. There's 2 main categories that it's known for, and the first one is social impairment and communication difficulties. Like you were saying, they tend to have a little bit of trouble with this part of life. And the other one is rigid and repetitive behaviors. So to get a little more into the specifics, some of these things might include avoiding eye contact. It's very common for those with autism to not to want to make eye contact starting from a very young age. As toddlers even, they will avoid eye contact. Another one is difficulty understanding emotions, and along with that, obviously they then struggle to communicate their own emotions and talk with others about emotional topics. This can be a source of struggle. Another one is that they are often socially withdrawn, like you said. So this is not always the case by any means, but lots of them kind of struggle with that social interaction and prefer being alone. Also, delayed speech, as infants and toddlers takes them a little bit longer to speak sometimes, or they might have difficulty speaking or use really unusual speaking patterns. All of these things can be present, as well as difficulty understanding nonverbal gestures. So this could include things like tone and body language. They also sometimes struggle with sarcasm and other forms of humor. So it can be difficult for them to read people like a lot of us are used to doing, which is part of why they can struggle with this kind of social interaction and forming relationships. Another common characteristic is an obsessive interest in certain topics, like you were saying. So it's very common that one thing will really grab their interest, and that really holds their focus to an impressive degree. I know of one person who just loves bugs. That was her special interest, was just anything related to insects, and she just based her entire life around this love of bugs. And that's something that you see in a lot of people with autism. Let's see, so the next one is arm flapping or rocking, that kind of repetitive body movement they find very soothing. So arm flapping would be like this, for example, or rocking your body back and forth. Both very common. And they need routines. They really thrive on daily routines. They don't like a lot of change, so that is a common source of breakdowns or emotional difficulties is dealing with a lot of change rather than having a really set routine. Okay, so these are all like common characteristics, and we're gonna in the next slide see an example of an autism spectrum test that someone might take if they are autistic. So this is just an example of a result that one person would get, and as you can see, there's lots of different categories of symptoms or characteristics. Like we have depression, fixations, social difficulty, tics and fidgets, and each one is a different, two different scale of severity for this particular person. So at the bottom you'll see that it says that their symptoms are moderate, but that does not mean that they are moderate in every category of symptom. They're not equally bad in all parts of the disorder. Instead, they have a harder time with anxiety, depression, and noise sensitivity, but they don't deal with social difficulty a lot. Like that isn't as bad for them. So it's more severe in some parts of their lives and less so in others. And this is true for everyone. So for a different person, this chart could look completely different. They might really struggle with, like, let's say, poor eye contact and social difficulty, but like not really have a lot of anxiety. So it's going to be different. This is why it's a spectrum. It does encompass what used to be referred to as a lot of different disorders that we've now recognized as just autism to a different degree, to this spectrum. So don't expect all of your students to behave the same. Just know that they're all going to have slightly different needs, and you'll need to provide them with different accommodations to make them feel really comfortable. So, as teachers, here are a few strategies that we can do to help our students in our classrooms. So the first one is to give them a routine to follow. Like I said before, they really thrive on routines, on this rigid schedule that they can expect and know to follow. So when you have a student with autism, try to give them a really good idea of what to expect in your classroom every single day. You might write it out for them or just go over it with them verbally. We'll start with a bell ringer activity for 5 minutes. You can expect to have lecture, work time, things like that. If there is a change in the routine, then you will definitely want to let them know about it beforehand, let them know what to expect. If you're going on a field trip or if you're going to a computer lab or something else unexpected, like it says down below here, you do want to avoid unnecessary changes for them, as well as warn them ahead of time about any unavoidable changes or disruptions to the routine. So if you are going to have some sort of change or unexpected event, they will do much better if they know about it and can prepare for it rather than being caught unawares. That can be a source of a lot of emotional turmoil, and they will very likely get upset about it. One example of this is seating charts, actually. So growing up, I had a friend with autism spectrum disorder. At the time, we referred to it as Asperger's, which is now known as high-functioning autism. But I still remember in 3rd or 4th grade, in this class, we had a seating chart that the teacher would change every month or so. We would move around the class as one typically does with the seating chart, but one thing that this teacher did for the student was that he was always kept in the same spot in the classroom. He had his particular spot and he stayed there the whole year with his aide, and the rest of us just moved, but he stayed in that spot. And that's one example of a super easy accommodation you could make for a student who might struggle with change and prefer some sort of stability in your class. So another thing that teachers often do is have skill-oriented interventions to teach students with autism social and language skills. So this is something that specialists, counselors in your school would do, that you could send students to them for, especially at a younger age, is teaching those key skills that they might not be so good at or might need extra help with, especially those social and language skills. Along with that, a kind of intervention is applied behavioral analysis, where the specialist will work to encourage positive, good behavior and discourage negative behavior. That's something that has had a lot of success with children in the past. It's really important as teachers that we communicate with parents, administrators, and other staff in the school. I have this chart over here showing a student's IEP team. And as you can tell, there's just a lot of different people that you should be in communication with, both inside the school and outside of it, in order to make sure that you really understand those students' needs and how you can address them. This is the best way to get that understanding of them that you need to help them. And the last thing down here is to provide strategies to help the students calm down and avoid overstimulation. I didn't really talk about this before, but people with autism spectrum disorder often struggle a lot with overstimulation when there's a lot of noise, activity, people around, light, anything like that. Like that can be very overwhelming for them and cause them to kind of shut down or have an emotional breakdown. So it can be helpful for them to avoid those situations, or when they begin to feel overstimulated, to have a plan in place that they know how they can calm down. So you might have like a calm down corner in your classroom at a younger grade level, or let them know that they are welcome to leave your class, or go out in the hall for a few minutes, or maybe just go to the back of the classroom when they do anything that helps them feel like they have a way to escape when they begin to feel a little overstimulated. And all these things are great things that you can do to help your students with autism feel more comfortable and succeed in your classes. And that has been just a little introduction to autism spectrum disorder.